It was February 12th, 1898, the day of the opening of the Tennessee State Prison in Nashville, Tennessee. There were 1,403 prisoners admitted that day, and among them was a man by the name of Jameson Young. Young was serving a life sentence for murdering 4 people. There was no hope of parole. Security was tight, and even if a prisoner managed to escape, his life would be a constant struggle. Everything ran smoothly at the new prison for the first 4 years. No one escaped, and every security protocol was meticulously followed. Then, in March of 1902, Young and 16 other inmates devised a plan to escape through the east wing of the prison. Young had a wife and 2 kids at home. With a life sentence on his shoulders, he had everything to gain by escaping, and nothing to lose. The other men felt much the same way. Young's friend and fellow inmate, Gabriel Sandifer, had been a bomb technician in his former life. He was ironically serving 3 life sentences for what he jokingly referred to as loving his job. The details of his incarceration were somewhat ambiguous, but Sandifer was definitely a dangerous man. The plan was to blow the east wall of the prison with a bomb Gabriel had made out of contraband items smuggled into him over the previous year and a half. At the previously established time, the men made a mad dash to the east wing. Sandifer quickly activated the bomb, set it on the ground, and yelled for everyone to stand back. Boom! Sandifer's bomb detonated prematurely. Bricks, glass, metal bars, and slabs of concrete littered the air as the bomb ripped the wall wide open. The bomb had done its job, but Young, who was closest to the bomb at the time, had been slammed into a metal door frame by a flying slab of concrete. His head hit the door frame, and the trauma was extensive. He died almost instantaneously. Meanwhile, the remaining inmates had begun scrambling over the rubble toward freedom. Their success was short-lived, however. There were security guards waiting directly on the other side of the brick wall. One of the men had apparently tipped off the guards in exchange for a reduced sentence. All of the prisoners were returned to their cells except one, Jameson Young. Young was declared dead at the stroke of midnight on the floor of the dirty prison cell. The cell was eventually cleared of his few possessions, but one thing of his remained. On the back wall of the cell, Young had written the slanted words, "Welcome to Hell," in scribbled handwriting. Since Young's death in March of 1902, his cell has been occupied 12 times by 12 different prisoners. Each prisoner died within 3 months of being incarcerated. An inmate in an adjacent cell block said he would rather be on death row than stay in that cell. There have been stories of screams and shrieks resonating from the cell at midnight every night. Mysterious lights and floating orbs are said to pace the cell, and even the guards have recounted odd noises in the early morning hours. Prisoners doomed to the cell were said to have sunk into madness until their hearts gave out. Invariably, their lifeless bodies covered with scratches, bruises, cuts, and blood would be discovered in the cell. It got so bad that inmates were organizing massive escape efforts. The fear of death was minor in comparison to their fear of the cell. In 1907, the prisoner assigned to the cell organized an attack on the main prison entrance. 10 men attempted to override a switch engine and drive it through the prison gates. There were fires, riots, and chaos during the next few decades. Violence got increasingly worse. The worst it ever got, though, was in May of 1950, when there were 6 consecutive deaths in 6 days. Some say the deaths were caused by overcrowding 800 cells to fit 1,400 prisoners. Others say it was the poor sanitation in the deteriorating old building. However, if you ask any prisoner about the deaths, they would all say it was the cell of Jameson Young. All 6 of the men who died over that 6-day period had spent time in Young's original cell. The last man to die in the Tennessee State Prison was Gabriel Sandifer. He died in Young's cell at midnight on June 1st, 1952. There's not a single prisoner who was present that isn't haunted by what they heard. It was too horrific to be forgotten. Jonathan Rourke, the occupant of the adjacent cell, said, "It sounded like a soul was being stripped and shredded, destroying every piece of humanity left in him." In the other adjacent cell, George Harris said, Sandifer was talking to someone, saying, "Please, please don't take me away. It's too soon, too soon. I'm sorry. Please let me stay here longer, please." Then a shrill scream rang throughout the prison. All that was left was pain and ugliness. The facility was closed on June 12, 1992, as a result of a court case citing overcrowding and unfit health conditions within the prison. The doors are closed, and the inmates have been moved to other prisons. But those most familiar with the facility know that not all the cells are empty. Since 1992, the only people that go in the prison are the occasional tourists and film crews. In 1998, the whole cast from the Green Mile traveled to the prison to film on location. Some of the actors in the film were Tom Hanks, Michael Clarke Duncan, and Doug Hutchison. Tom Hanks, a well-known actor and the main character in the film, said, "When we were in the prison, we tried to ignore the creepy stairwells, hallways, and cells. In fact, one time when I was filming this scene with Michael, we had to stop filming because of a high-pitched screaming coming from a cell down the hallway. It sounded like vocal cords were being shredded." Doug Hutchison plays the part of Percy Wetmore, a torturous prison guard who ends up sabotaging the death of one of the prisoners on death row. As a result of this, Tom Hanks and his fellow guards put Percy in a straitjacket, tape his mouth shut, and throw him into a dark, padded room like one in an asylum while he attempts to scream through the tape covering his mouth. Once Doug is in the room and the door is shut, the scene is supposed to be over. However, this time when the door closed, Doug continued screaming, growing increasingly louder, and then stopped. The crew did not think anything of it. Maybe he was just getting into his character for the next scene. However, when the cameras were rolling again, Tom opened the door to the room, and Doug was lying face down on the floor, with the tape and his gag to the side, but the straitjacket was still strapped tightly around his motionless body, pinning his arms to his back. The director, Frank Darabont, ordered the crew to stop what they were doing, rushed into the room, and turned Doug over on his back. He was unconscious, but that wasn't what worried Frank. There were gashes on Doug's face, from his hairline to his jawline, like someone had grabbed his face and scraped down the length of it. There were dark purple bruises on his throat and chest, and large clumps of hair were missing from his head. When he gained consciousness again, he went into a frenzy and ran out of the prison, moaning like a child having a nightmare. Tourists and photographers occasionally trickle into the prison. However, there have been multiple disappearances from 1998 to the present. One photographer describes that the prison was so dark you could not see your hand in front of your face, and was not sure what her camera had captured until later. The cell is still existing inside the prison, and some think as a portal from hell to earth for demons and ghosts to torture and haunt people. Jameson Young is believed to be still lurking inside his cell, serving the rest of his life sentence in prison, coming and going between earth and hell, where he really belongs.